Good afternoon. Got to bring the energy levels up here. I think we're suffering from the lunch that we've just had shortly. I did want to speak first and thank Patrick and certainly Brian for holding this tech forum today. This is actually my third tech forum, and going back through 2014, each year this has gotten bigger and bigger. There's a lot more to talk about, as you can see in some of the slide presentations here. But I think this forum is wonderful for learning, sharing a lot of ideas, talking about challenges and issues, and also, just taking and asking questions. So in that spirit, what I wanted to talk about today is to talk about Next-Gen 911 and also look at it more from the consumption of location and location services and what it means as far as some of the benefits, some of which John Snapp has already kind of prefaced when he's talked about some of the challenges of the rendering of how do we bring that location information and how do we display it. So in the world of the 911 telecommunicator, it's a very familiar world, but also one that's easy to recognize and take advantage of some of the benefits of the new technology that you've heard about today. So in that regard, first thing I have to do is contextualize a little bit about how the location applies. I share with you some stats here, which are pretty incredible. When you look at kind of the wireless data explosion, a lot of that is enabled by, we all carry the smartphones around. Almost 50% of the world has access to broadband service. That's a lot, okay? There's a lot of, I'll call it the big pipes of the plumbing to bring the information. And then with that, you have basically a lot of the people that are using mobile data in a wireless society. And 90% of the U.S. agencies actually have a BYOD policy there for smartphones, smartphone uses by the police and the responders. Coupled with that, you've got a uptick in the number of applications that public safety is using on their smartphones. And then in addition to that, with the proliferation of all of the social media and the networking, 96% of the public safety agencies are tapped into that social networking in one way or another to use that information. Video. Video is also very pervasive in terms of you got 10,000 hours per week with the body cams of data that's being collected. So a tremendous onslaught of data usage. And then with that, and very predominant in public safety, is the use of messaging. Messaging as an application has become a table stake in terms of that communications. So why do I bring this up? Well, if it's not apparent, we're really transitioning. We're transitioning from a very voice-centric world in the past to much more of a data-centric world. And with that data centricity is, with the ability to have bandwidth, is how do I provide more context through the use of information? You've heard, video being referenced there. So this is a challenge that public safety faces every day. And probably one of the simplest and easiest ways to capture that is in the form of a use case. We've got, the citizens or your constituents here that want to contact 911. And what they want to do is they want to contact it on their own terms. The choice of the device, the choice of what do I use in terms of a service? Do I call? Do I text? Do I use video? That's really now in the hands of the citizen. Coupled with that is you have the telecommunicator that you've heard about and talked about today, but they've predominantly been used to answering voice calls. And in this new world, it's not about just answering voice calls, it's answering the concept of a text call, and also to come, usage of video. And then you have the concept that you heard about, the IoT, so sensors, and how do sensors that produce data get answered in the PSAP? Well, with that is the incident response and getting it out to the responder who can, as quick as possible, provide the appropriate response. So I use this slide to really kind of underpin the issue, which is things are really changing. What's represented here is you see technological change, you see generational change, and you see societal change, because much of society has become more about data, the use of analytics, coupled with public safety of tried and true, I make a call or I text a call, but now I also have the analytics to figure out How do I couple that call with all the data to make it the most appropriate response, so the most informed and the most timely? So this picture, I think, really captures a lot about what this tech showcase is and what you're hearing today in presentations. Complex slide, I'll make it very simple. What you've heard about by the panel today, that talked from Tennessee, Maine, et cetera, is you have NextGen as the network of networks, but that infrastructure and the ability to interconnect that infrastructure needs to be in place so that that previous slide that I just showed you can be realized. You have an end-to-end picture here of the choice of the citizens using the various devices or the Internet of Things and sensors providing information. And you have the progression through whether I'm a wireline, wireless, VoIP network over an emergency services network, so NextGen 911, ESINet, core services, into the tried and true response networks. So you have your LMR, you have your broadband LTE or FirstNet, and this picture really, you know, underpins the need, what you've heard today about the investment in the infrastructure to be able to enable all of the communications and the expectations of the use case that I just showed. So there's one more piece to this, and that is, don't forget about, I have the field of dreams, I have all the plumbing in place, I have the big pipes to bring the data, I have lots of data, as you can see from the statistics. So what do I do with it? If I don't manage it, and I can't comprehend and understand how to operate on it, then it's chaos. So now you bring in the concept of workflow and optimization of the workflow. Motorola spent a lot of time looking at who are the users, what are the roles, what do those roles require in terms of data usage within a mission-critical workflow. We've kind of broken it down and stratified it into, we have the public safety customers, which are the citizens. We have the operational roles, which are who are all the people, whether they're in the dispatch center, the 911 centers, what do they do? What do they need for information? How do they use that information? Who are the support roles that need to provide those systems? Because this paradigm now that we've changed to, remember, is a heavy data-centric environment. And it's all about IT networks. And with those IT networks, I have to manage the workflow. And a simple example would be is when I initiate a call, whatever the call type is, I have the incoming from a citizen. It goes typically to the call taker who may need to bring in the supervisor or the manager. It's sent over to a dispatcher, and then basically it's sent out to the first responder or that supporting cast for that response. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people that need that same information for maybe different purposes to operate on as part of their role. But underpinning that is, I need to know the location. Today's 911 service is predicated on understanding the location of the caller. So we've talked about, and you've heard John talk about the GPS, but there's a lot more technology that's been developed and can be coupled with today's use of the GPS technology. As John referenced, the Wi-Fi, the beacons, the use of modules for barometric pressure for the Z dimension, the Z dimension in terms of where am I at in the building. But even more important is the use of the wireless devices, tried and true smartphone, and the operating systems that can provide a lot of information about the location. So how do I bring all of that together? And then how do I apply that knowledge of the location so that I can provide that to all of those roles and users that I just showed you? Because what's 911 about? When someone makes a call of any type, it's got to be bulletproof. It always has to work. Secondly is, the faster I know where that person is at, that caller is at, the more able I'm going to be to respond quickly, but also with having that information is what's the appropriate response. So location can't be underscored enough. And with that said, what we're showing here at our table is, and I've captured it in this picture, working with our partner, Rapid, as a location services provider. I'm basically, we have two demos here. The first demo on the left is to show the a use of an application to show the use of location. and some integration in terms of in the 911 center, and how do we use that information, which is provided much more rapidly and much more robustly, to hasten or quicken the response, okay? And also, with that is to take advantage of, just like in today's world, when I need to do a rebid for getting an improved location, with the location services and the technology that we just talked about, is to do that in a much quicker way. Remember, time is of the essence in the 911 response. So our first demo is going to show how to integrate and to demonstrate in that workflow the powers of using a location between the citizen that initiates and the 911 call taker. And then secondly is to show the integration at the edge, whether it's in a smartphone device or whether it's in the tried and true respondents' radios, is how do I bring that information together for the benefit of the responder? It's the concept of, if the responder knows the location and on a smartphone actually has a map, so the rendering, he also can get turn by turn to understand, how do I get to that caller and get there the quickest? So I invite all of you in your spare time here in between the presentations to stop by and to actually see, the location capabilities that we've integrated, and also some of what John talked about was, what's that presentation or the rendering look like when location is displayed to that call taker or to the responder? So it's very innate in terms of the understanding and ease of use. Okay, so with that, I thank you. And next presentation.